The Galactic Council's war room was a grand chamber, one of the largest and most advanced meeting halls ever built. It was located in the heart of Zenith Station, a neutral ground for all civilizations to come together. Above them, the ceiling was a massive dome of translucent materials, through which the vast expanse of space could be seen. Stars shimmered in the distance, and the soft hum of the station's life support systems was the only sound that broke the eerie silence in the room. The representatives of over 100 species sat in a large circle, each of them a symbol of their respective civilizations. Alien faces, some humanoid and some completely otherworldly, stared at the center of the room where the humans were expected to speak. On the opposite side of the room stood a large hollow platform, where a holographic map of the galaxy floated. The map displayed the locations of various key systems, including Earth's position near the edge of known space. The humans had finally made their way to this meeting after years of diplomacy. For years, they had been observed, studied, and scrutinized by the Galactic Council. The humans, known for their sudden bursts of technological advancement, had gained the Council's attention, but not in a way that inspired confidence. The Council had long debated whether or not the humans should be brought into the fold of galactic diplomacy. Their rapid progress and unique nature made them unpredictable, and no one was quite sure what to expect from them. Finally, after much pressure, the humans had agreed to attend this high-stakes meeting. They had sent their finest ambassador, Commander Kellen Cartwright, to represent Earth in the hopes of securing a peaceful future for their people among the stars. The Council had believed this would be a formality, a simple meeting that would help integrate Earth into galactic society. But as the doors to the war room opened, and Commander Cartwright and her delegation stepped inside, a strange unease settled over the room. Cartwright was calm, almost eerily so. Her expression was unreadable, her movements precise as she made her way toward the center of the room. Beside her, her aides walked in step with her, their eyes scanning the assembly. They could feel the weight of the Council's gaze on them, and for a moment, it seemed as if the entire galaxy had turned its eyes on Earth. Cartwright took her place at the center, and the hum of the room quieted. The assembly waited for her to speak. It was customary for the representatives of a new species to express their willingness to join the Council's ongoing efforts for peace, unity, and order. What happened next would be a surprise to everyone. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Cartwright began, her voice cool but firm. We come here today not to offer our allegiance, but to deliver a message. A murmur ran through the room. The Council had expected promises of cooperation, a commitment to galactic peace, and mutual benefit. But instead, the humans had come with something entirely different in mind. We have reviewed the terms and the history of this Council, Cartwright continued. We've studied your methods, your actions, and your failures, and we have decided to refuse any further involvement in your diplomatic processes. The words hung in the air, like a heavy fog. There was a collective gasp. Representatives exchanged nervous glances, some openly showing their shock. How could the humans, who had long sought peace with the stars, turn down such an opportunity? Why would they refuse diplomacy at such a critical moment? You must be joking, said Representative Talix, the leader of the Zrith, a race known for their towering crystalline bodies. Surely you understand the benefits of joining the Council. Your species is young, but your technology, your advances in so many fields, are unmatched. This is your chance to join the Galactic Order. Why would you turn your back on it? Cartwright's eyes locked onto Talix. Your Galactic Order, she said slowly, is based on centuries of manipulation and control. It's designed to keep the status quo, to suppress new ideas and emerging powers. We've been watching, and we see what you truly value, your own power. Are you saying we're corrupt? Another representative, an amphibious species known as the Tauren, asked with a raised brow. Cartwright stood tall. Not corrupt, no, but your methods are outdated. They've worked for millennia, yes, but they no longer serve the universe. The galaxy is changing, and we intend to be part of that change. but not on your terms. The murmurs grew louder. Some species exchanged nervous whispers, while others stared at Cartwright in disbelief. The idea of a species refusing the Council's offer of peace was unprecedented. And yet, here the humans were doing exactly that. For a moment, there was complete silence in the room. It was as if time itself had stopped. The Council was stunned. Had they misjudged the humans? Had they underestimated the risks of bringing such a volatile species into their midst? Cartwright's words cut through the tension in the room like a blade. "We are not interested in playing by your rules," Cartwright concluded, her voice ringing with finality. "We will forge our own path with our own ideals, and if that means standing apart from your council, then so be it." She turned on her heel and began walking toward the exit. The humans filed out behind her, leaving the council in stunned silence. What had just happened? The war room buzzed with quiet whispers, but no one could answer the burning question on everyone's mind. What had the humans just done, and why? As the doors closed behind them, the chamber erupted into a frenzy of voices. The Galactic Council was in complete disarray. No one had seen this coming. No one had ever dared to refuse the Council's diplomatic overtures. The humans had just set the galaxy on edge, and it was clear that nothing would ever be the same again. As the humans walked out of the Galactic Council's war room, their departure was met with utter shock and confusion. Their decision to turn down the Council's offer of diplomacy was unprecedented, and the atmosphere inside the Council chamber felt like a bomb had just exploded. But while the representatives of the Council struggled to come to terms with this bold move, elsewhere in the galaxy, the consequences of the humans' actions began to ripple. Aboard the Zrith diplomatic cruiser, one of the most influential ships in the galactic fleet, Ambassador Talix was already seething with frustration. The Zrith were an ancient race, known for their vast knowledge of the cosmos and their glittering crystal forms that reflected the stars. They had always believed themselves to be the stewards of galactic order, the ones who knew what was best for all species. But now, the humans had defied that order, and Talix was furious. He paced back and forth across the gleaming metallic floor of his personal quarters, his crystalline body catching the light from the nearby windows that offered a breathtaking view of the stars. The vast emptiness of space seemed to mock him as his thoughts swirled with confusion and anger. "This cannot be allowed to stand," Talix muttered to himself, his voice echoing softly in the empty room. "How dare they refuse the Council's offer? How dare they turn their back on the galactic order we've spent millennia building?" The Zrith had been at the forefront of galactic diplomacy for centuries. Their influence had shaped the course of countless species, and their wisdom was unquestioned. But now, one small species, the humans, had shaken the very foundation of everything they had built. Talix pressed a button on the console beside him, and a holographic display flickered to life in front of him. The image of the human delegation from Earth appeared, showing Commander Kellen Cartwright at the center. Talix studied her face, trying to understand the cold determination that had been present in her eyes when she had refused the Council's peace offer. "Humans," Talix whispered with a growl. "What are they hiding? What do they know that we don't?" He turned his attention to the nearby communications console and began to send a message to his superiors back on the Zrith homeworld. He could feel the weight of the situation growing heavier by the second. The humans' refusal was not just an insult. It was a direct challenge to the power the Zrith and other species had long enjoyed. It was a sign that the balance of power in the galaxy could be shifting, and that terrified him. Across the galaxy, the news of the humans' bold move spread like wildfire. The Galactic Council, once so confident in its control over the galaxy, was now in a state of disarray. Council members from various species were sending urgent communications, trying to figure out how to respond to the humans' rejection. Some advocated for military action, while others urged caution, knowing that the humans' sudden defiance could be a sign of something much larger at play. Meanwhile, on Earth, the government's response was equally swift. Commander Cartwright's decision to refuse the Council's offer had sent shockwaves through the highest levels of power. President Laura Harper and the Earth Defense Coalition were already in emergency meetings, trying to assess the political and military ramifications of their species' actions. In the command center of Earth's military forces, President Harper stood before a large holographic display, her face grim. The room was filled with her most trusted advisors, each of them struggling to comprehend the full extent of what had just transpired. On the display, a live feed from the Galactic Council's war room played, showing the stunned expressions of the council members and the tension that had followed Cartwright's bold move. "Why did Commander Cartwright do it?" asked General Alexander Hall, a tall, seasoned military leader who had seen countless battles in Earth's defense. His voice was filled with a mix of confusion and concern. Why turn down diplomacy at this critical moment? Harper didn't answer right away. She knew the stakes. The humans had just made a powerful statement to the galaxy, and it was one that would be difficult to take back. There would be consequences, serious consequences. "We did it because we had to," Harper finally said, her voice steady but resolute. "The Council has no idea what they're dealing with. We're not going to let them dictate our future. We're not going to be pawns in their game." A young officer, Lieutenant Karen Lee, stepped forward hesitantly. "But Ma'am, do we know what the other species are thinking? What if they decide to retaliate? What if the Zrith or others take this as an act of war?" Harper looked at the officer, her expression hardening. "Then we will be ready. We've been preparing for this moment for years. The galaxy will soon learn that Earth is not to be underestimated." The military room fell silent as Harper's words settled over the room. They all knew the gravity of what had just happened. Earth had made its move, and now the galaxy would respond. Whether in fear, anger, or curiosity, every species in the galaxy would be watching. The next few days, even hours, would determine the future of Earth's place among the stars. Back aboard the Zrith diplomatic cruiser, Ambassador Talix's message had been received, and the Zrith High Command was already plotting their response. Their decision would not be made lightly, and Talix knew this would be the beginning of a much larger conflict, one that would shape the future of the galaxy in ways no one could predict. The humans had refused diplomacy. Now the question was, what would they do next? And would anyone, even the Galactic Council itself, be able to stop them? The starlit expanse outside the windows of the human battle cruiser felt strangely serene. A calm ocean of darkness, dotted with distant stars and distant possibilities. However, inside the ship, the mood was anything but calm. The crew members of the Earth Defense Coalition were on high alert, their nerves frayed by the sudden and unexpected turn of events. Commander Kellen Cartwright, having made the fateful decision to reject the Galactic Council's offer of diplomacy, now stood at the helm of Earth's most powerful military vessel, awaiting the consequences of her actions. She gazed out of the viewport, her eyes tracing the path of a nearby asteroid belt, her thoughts far away. The quiet hum of the ship's engines was the only sound in the command room, but it did nothing to soothe the tension that had settled over the crew. The decision to walk away from the Council's peace talks had been a calculated risk. Cartwright knew that Earth was not ready for full-scale galactic war. But she also knew that the Council was not prepared to understand Earth's strength and independence. Humanity had always fought their own battles, solved their own problems, and refused to bow to anyone, even the powerful forces of the Galactic Council. "Commander, the communications grid is coming alive," Lieutenant Karen Lee reported from her station. "Every species in the Council is sending messages. They demand to know why we left, why we refused diplomacy. Some of them are starting to ask if we're preparing for war." Cartwright's face hardened. It was exactly what she had feared, but it was also the response she had expected. The Council had underestimated humanity, believing that their primitive methods of conflict were nothing more than empty gestures. But they hadn't accounted for Earth's willingness to act on principle, even in the face of certain destruction. "It's time," Cartwright muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. She walked over to the central communications station, where a holographic display of the Galactic Council's war room had been transmitted. The image showed the leaders of various alien species still reeling from her abrupt departure. Their confusion and anger were palpable, and Cartwright could only imagine how shaken they must be. For centuries, they had dictated the galaxy's peace and order. But now, the humans had made it clear. They would not be controlled. As Cartwright's fingers hovered over the controls, the image shifted to show a new set of coordinates, the direction Earth's military forces were now heading. A full fleet was being mobilized to take a defensive stance, but it was also positioned to demonstrate Earth's strength should the need arise. Cartwright was determined to make it clear to the galaxy that humanity would never be a mere spectator in the grand galactic theater. "Prepare all ships for full readiness," she ordered, her voice commanding and firm. "This isn't just about defending Earth anymore. It's about showing the galaxy that we are not afraid." Meanwhile, the communications coming in from the Zrith High Command were becoming increasingly insistent. Talix, the Zrith ambassador, was not one to take such a snub lightly. His messages contained veiled threats, warnings that the refusal of diplomacy could only lead to one outcome: war. But Cartwright was unfazed. She had anticipated their response and prepared for it. The Zrith and the other species in the Council would soon learn that humanity was no longer content to be at the mercy of their decisions. At that moment, the doors to the command room slid open, and a new figure entered, General Alexander Hall, a respected leader within Earth's military. His reputation for quick thinking in battle preceded him, and Cartwright had come to trust his judgment in times of crisis. "Commander," General Hall said, his voice serious, "the Council isn't just talking about war anymore. They're making preparations. The Zrith have already begun mobilizing their fleets, and other species are following their lead. Earth is about to be caught in the middle of something far bigger than we ever imagined." Cartwright turned to face the general, her eyes narrowing with determination. "Let them come," she said calmly. "If the Council wants a war, we'll give them one. But not on their terms, on ours." For the first time since the Council's peace talks had broken down, a sense of clarity washed over Cartwright. This wasn't just about avoiding conflict. It was about setting the terms of humanity's future in the galaxy. If Earth was to survive in this new world, it would have to stand firm and show that it would never back down, no matter the cost. "We'll show them that humanity doesn't need their diplomacy, their rules, or their approval," Cartwright continued, her voice resolute. "We'll prove to the galaxy that we fight for what we believe in, no matter the odds." As the final preparations were made, Cartwright's mind shifted to her final contingency plan, a plan that only a few trusted individuals within the coalition knew about. If things escalated further, Earth would activate a secret weapon, the Silent Arm, a hidden fleet of warships designed to disrupt any enemy fleet with near impossible precision. It was humanity's trump card, one that could tip the scales in their favor if needed. But Cartwright knew that activating the Silent Arm would push Earth into a new phase of conflict, a phase from which there might be no return. Back on Earth, the political leaders, military officials, and civilians had no idea the scale of what was unfolding in the stars above them. The decision to turn down the Council's diplomacy had set in motion events that would soon alter the course of history. What began as a simple rejection of an alien offer would now become the catalyst for an intergalactic conflict, the likes of which no one had ever seen before. The humans had set their course. Now, the galaxy would have to react. And no one, neither the Galactic Council nor the alien species that had watched humanity for centuries, was prepared for what came next. In the hidden underground command bunker deep beneath the Earth Defense Coalition's headquarters, an air of quiet urgency filled the room. This was where the true heart of Earth's military operations lay, far from the eyes of the public and the galactic community. Commander Kellen Cartwright stood before a holographic display, her eyes scanning the data with intense focus. The rejection of diplomacy had set the stage for a new reality, one where humanity would have to fight for its survival and perhaps its place in the galaxy. The lights in the bunker flickered slightly as the data from Earth's various military forces flooded the central command system. Each report painted a picture of urgency, but also of determination. Earth was mobilizing, and the world was preparing to stand united in the face of a threat from the galactic powers that had underestimated them for far too long. Cartwright stood next to General Alexander Hall, the two of them analyzing the data together. Their faces were grim, but their resolve was ironclad. They knew what was at stake. Their actions in the coming days would either secure humanity's future in the stars or lead to its destruction. "The Zrith are already in position," Hall said, his voice steady but tinged with concern. "They're moving their fleets into our sector, and we're seeing signs of other races preparing to follow suit. The Council isn't just posturing anymore. They're making their move." Cartwright nodded. Her eyes narrowed. The tension in the air was palpable. Earth had never faced anything like this before. And though humanity had a long history of fighting for survival, the scope of this conflict was beyond anything the species had ever imagined. Still, there was no turning back now. "Prepare the Silent Arm," Cartwright ordered, her voice unwavering. The Silent Arm was Earth's secret weapon, a fleet of advanced warships designed to strike with precision and invisibility. They were humanity's last line of defense, silent, deadly, and nearly impossible to track. The Silent Arm had been kept hidden for years, its existence known only to a select few within the highest ranks of Earth's military leadership. As Hall relayed the command, Cartwright turned her attention to the larger strategic picture. Earth's fleet was formidable, but the Galactic Council's combined forces far outnumbered them. It wasn't just about winning a battle anymore. It was about survival. The Council's powers had already shown their willingness to use force. Now, Earth had to show that it was willing to stand and fight with everything it had. "Can we count on the other colonies?" Cartwright asked, her voice laced with a tinge of doubt. Earth wasn't alone in the universe. There were human colonies scattered across various star systems, but would they be willing to fight alongside their home planet? "We've reached out to all of them," Hall replied. "The colonies are divided. Some are more cautious, but the majority are rallying behind Earth. They know this is about more than just one planet's survival. It's about humanity's future in the galaxy." Cartwright's mind raced. The coming conflict would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Council would underestimate humanity once again, but this time it would be their downfall. She had seen what humans were capable of in times of great adversity, and now Earth's true strength would be tested. As the preparations continued, Cartwright moved to another part of the bunker, where several officers were working frantically to prepare the Silent Arm's deployment. The fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. The ships were designed to operate in total secrecy, using advanced cloaking technology and stealth systems that made them nearly invisible to any form of detection. "We're ready to launch," one of the officers reported, her voice calm but filled with urgency. "The fleet is in position. We're just waiting for your command, Commander." Cartwright took a deep breath and looked around the room at the faces of the officers and soldiers who had stood by her side throughout this crisis. They were ready. The Silent Arm would not fail them. "Launch the Silent Arm," Cartwright commanded, her voice steady and resolute. A series of beeps and clicks echoed through the command room as the order was passed down. The fleet, hidden in the darkness of space, began to move silently toward their target. In the vast expanse of space, unseen by the Council's watchful eyes, the Silent Arm slipped into position. These warships, equipped with advanced stealth technology and powerful weapons, were designed for one purpose only: to strike with precision and disrupt enemy forces before they had a chance to retaliate. Humanity had always relied on ingenuity and adaptability in times of crisis, and the Silent Arm was the ultimate expression of this spirit. Back in the command bunker, Cartwright couldn't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. The first phase of humanity's counterattack had begun. The Silent Arm was now in motion, a shadow in the void, ready to strike at the heart of the Galactic Council's military presence. The message was clear. Earth would not be intimidated. Earth would not bend. The stakes had never been higher, but for Commander Cartwright and her crew, there was no turning back. The fate of humanity, and perhaps the future of the galaxy, was in their hands. The deep void of space was quiet, eerily silent, as if holding its breath. In the black expanse, the silent arm moved undetected. The fleet, invisible to the eyes of any galactic sensors, slipped through the vastness like shadows, cloaked in the darkness of the universe. Humanity had often been underestimated, but this time they had come prepared. The Galactic Council was about to learn just how dangerous humanity could be when pushed too far. Commander Kellen Cartwright stood at the heart of the Earth Defense Coalition's command bunker, her eyes fixed on the holographic display before her. The silent arm was nearing its target, and the tension in the room was palpable. There was no turning back now. Once the first shot was fired, there would be no more diplomatic solutions. This was war, and humanity was stepping onto the galactic stage. "All ships report ready," General Alexander Hall said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of what was to come. "The fleet is in position. We're just waiting for your orders, Commander." Cartwright's hands tightened around the edges of the command console. Her mind raced, but her expression remained calm, even as her heart beat faster. She had never imagined that humanity's first confrontation with the Galactic Council would come to this, but here they were. The silent arm was Earth's first strike in a war that could change the galaxy forever, and it would be a strike that no one would forget. "Initiate Phase 1, Cartwright ordered, her voice cold and steady. "Let's show them what happens when they push humans too far." On the bridge of the lead ship, the Impetus, Captain Emma Ramirez watched as the orders were transmitted to the rest of the fleet. The silent arm was ready to make its move. The ships would use the element of surprise to strike at the heart of the Council's forces, crippling their ability to retaliate before they even knew what hit them. The fleet moved with deadly precision, each ship maintaining perfect formation as they slipped silently toward their targets. The first phase of their mission was a preemptive strike on the Council's supply lines, disrupting their resources before they could mount an effective defense. The Impetus led the charge, its sleek form disappearing into the dark as it approached a fleet of supply vessels from the Sithorian Empire, unaware of the threat looming above them. "We're in position," Ramirez said, her voice calm but full of anticipation. She had trained for this moment for years, but now that it was here, the weight of the mission was heavy. This was humanity's first shot in what could be an all-out war, and the stakes had never been higher. "Prepare to deploy the weapons." The ship's crew moved with a sense of synchronized efficiency, all trained to act without hesitation. They knew what was at stake. Ramirez's fingers hovered over the activation panel. One push, and the first strike would be unleashed. She thought of Earth, of all the people depending on them to succeed. The entire fleet would need to work together, each ship an integral part of the mission. "Launch." Cartwright's voice came through the comms, sending a ripple of determination through the crew. With a press of a button, the first salvo was fired. Missiles shot out from the Impetus, streaking through the darkness like shooting stars. They were invisible to the enemy's sensors until it was too late, striking the supply ships with deadly precision. Explosions erupted, bright flashes of light cutting through the darkness of space. The first wave of strikes caused massive damage. The Sithorian supply fleet was caught completely off guard, their ships shredded by the first volley. Within seconds, the silent arm moved in to disable the communication networks, leaving the Council's forces blind to the threat they now faced. "First wave successful," Ramirez said, her voice a mix of relief and focus. "They're scrambling, but we've got them off balance." But Cartwright knew better than to celebrate. The first strike had been a success, but it was only the beginning. The silent arm had dealt the first blow, but the Galactic Council would retaliate soon. This was only the beginning of the war. "Phase 2, Cartwright said, her voice unwavering. "Prepare to target the command stations. We take out their leadership, and they won't know how to respond." The fleet moved forward, adjusting course with pinpoint accuracy. Every ship in the Silent Arm was equipped with advanced cloaking technology that made them invisible to the enemy. They had the element of surprise. This time, they were the ones on the attack. The Council's forces had no idea that Earth had such advanced technology, much less a fleet capable of striking without warning. Meanwhile, back in the Earth Defense Coalition's command bunker, General Hall was monitoring the progress of the operation. As the Silent Arm moved toward their next target, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Council wasn't just going to take this lying down. Earth had sent a message. No more diplomacy, no more negotiations. And now, the galaxy was going to have to deal with the consequences. They'll retaliate, Hall muttered, his fingers tapping nervously against the console. We just have to make sure we're ready for whatever comes next. Cartwright, ever the strategist, was already thinking 3 steps ahead. We've prepared for this, and now we have to finish what we started. As the Silent Arm continued its mission, striking the Galactic Council's command stations, the message was clear. Humanity had entered the galactic arena. And this time, they weren't asking for permission. The silence that had followed the initial strike was broken only by the distant hum of the Galactic Council's remaining forces regrouping. Zenith Station, once the proud hub of intergalactic diplomacy, now found itself at the heart of a storm. Humanity had made its move, and the Galactic Council was not going to stand idle any longer. On the bridge of the Impetus, Commander Kellen Cartwright's fingers tightened around the armrest of her chair. Her eyes remained locked on the glowing holographic map that detailed the movements of both Earth's Silent Arm and the gathering forces of the Council's military fleet. They had expected retaliation, but the speed and coordination of the enemy was unsettling. They're mobilizing faster than we anticipated, General Hall said, his voice filled with both concern and respect. We need to accelerate Phase 3. If we don't hit them hard enough, they'll regroup and counterattack with everything they have. Cartwright nodded, her expression unchanging. The first strike had been a success, but it had also triggered the next phase of the war. The Galactic Council, now aware of the true threat humanity posed, had begun a counteroffensive. And they were coming for Zenith Station, the heart of humanity's diplomatic efforts and the symbol of their defiance. We'll hold them off as long as we can, Cartwright said, her voice cold but filled with determination. We knew the risks when we made this decision. Phase 3 begins now. Outside the station's massive docking bay, the Silent Arm continued its advance, its ships moving swiftly and silently through the dark expanse of space. The fleet had already decimated a large portion of the Council's supply lines, but now the focus shifted to Zenith Station itself. Earth's forces were not just defending. They were attacking with an overwhelming force designed to crush the Council's morale. All ships are in position, Commander, Captain Emma Ramirez reported from the Impetus. We're ready for the assault. Activate the energy shields, Cartwright ordered, her eyes narrowing as the first sign of the enemy fleet emerged from the shadows. It was large, much larger than they had expected. Hundreds of ships coming straight for them. Braced for impact, she added, her voice steady. This wasn't just a battle for the station. This was a battle for survival. The Council's forces would show no mercy. As the first wave of enemy ships closed in, the Silent Arm's cloaking technology began to flicker, momentarily losing its edge against the sheer force of the Council's retaliation. It wasn't enough to reveal their positions completely, but it was a sign that the balance was shifting. From the enemy lines, a massive dreadnought, the Zenther Prime, emerged from the blackness, its powerful weapons aimed directly at Zenith Station. Its hull gleamed like a black monolith, built to strike fear into anyone who dared oppose it. This is it, Cartwright said, her heart pounding in her chest. Target the Zenther Prime's weak points. We can't afford to miss. The Silent Arm responded immediately. Each ship launched its own volley of missiles, energy blasts, and anti-ship torpedoes. Explosions erupted in space as Earth's fleet fired in unison, each strike calculated with deadly precision. The first wave of missiles hit the Zenther Prime directly, and the dreadnought shuddered under the impact, its shields flickering and weakening. The enemy responded quickly, launching their own counterattacks in return. Waves of energy blasts rained down on the silent arm, catching some of the smaller ships off guard. But they fought back fiercely, their advanced technology allowing them to dodge and retaliate with overwhelming force. At the heart of the battle, the impetus remained the focal point of Earth's attack. It cut through the chaos, its weapon systems lighting up the darkness as it engaged the enemy with brutal efficiency. The crew worked like a well-oiled machine, coordinating strikes, defending the ship, and ensuring every shot hit its target. "We've got a hit on their forward shields," Ramirez shouted, her eyes focused on the redouts. "It's weakening fast. One more direct hit, and we'll breach their hull." Cartwright's face remained grim. They were pushing forward, but the battle wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The Zenthar Prime wasn't going to fall without a fight. As the silent arm pressed forward, Cartwright knew this battle would define the course of the war. If they failed here, it would mean more than just the loss of Zenith Station. It would signal humanity's failure to secure its place in the galaxy. "Don't let up," Cartwright commanded. "We need to keep them off balance. If we can break their fleet, we break their morale." As if on cue, a massive explosion erupted from the Zenthar Prime, signaling the breaching of its shields. The first successful strike had been made. The Council's pride and most powerful weapon had been compromised. But the victory was not without cost. As the Zenthar Prime began to falter, other ships in the fleet retaliated with renewed desperation. Their attacks became more erratic, more furious. They knew they were losing the battle, and they were willing to sacrifice everything to turn the tide. The battle for Zenith Station was far from over, and the Silent Arm knew they could not afford to let up. The Council's forces would regroup, and their counterattack would be brutal. But in this moment, humanity had proven that they were more than just survivors. They were conquerors in their own right, capable of shaking the very foundation of the galaxy. The roar of battle echoed through the vast expanse of space as the war for Zenith Station raged on. The once proud station, now a battleground, bore witness to the fiercest conflict the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity's silent arm, though battered and bruised, stood firm against the overwhelming forces of the Galactic Council. But the fight was far from over. The Council was desperate, and it would not go down without a final push. On the bridge of the impetus, Commander Kellen Cartwright stood tall, her gaze fixed on the chaos unfolding outside. The ship's hull groaned under the strain of constant bombardment, but it held strong. The crew worked tirelessly, coordinating their efforts with precision, determined to keep pushing forward. "We've lost contact with the outer fleet," Ramirez reported, her face pale as the data streamed across her screen. "They're being overwhelmed by enemy reinforcements." Cartwright's jaw tightened. The battle was becoming more than just a fight for Zenith Station. It was a fight for humanity's future in the galaxy. If they lost here, it would mean more than just the fall of one station. It would mean the collapse of Earth's hopes of ever standing toe-to-toe with the galactic powers. "Prepare for Phase 4, Cartwright commanded. "We're launching everything we have left. It's now or never." With a nod from her, the crew sprang into action. The Impetus's weapons systems hummed to life, and the remaining ships of the Silent Arm aligned themselves for one final strike. The mission was simple: break through the Council's defenses and deal a blow that would cripple their war effort. If they could succeed, they could end the war right here and now. But the Council wasn't about to let that happen. Outside, the Zenthar Prime, the Council's most powerful warship, had regained its strength and was leading the charge against the Silent Arm's forces. It moved with terrifying precision, firing with deadly accuracy as it sought to crush humanity's last hope. The rest of the Council's fleet had rallied around it, their ships forming a nearly impenetrable wall of fire. "They're closing in fast," Ramirez warned. "If we don't break through soon, we'll be outgunned." Cartwright's mind raced. She had only one option left: a risky maneuver that could turn the tide, but also cost them everything. It was a desperate plan, one that she knew could either be their salvation or their doom. "All ships, focus fire on the Zenthar Prime," Cartwright ordered. "We take that ship down, and the rest of the Council's fleet will scatter. We have one shot at this." The Silent Arm's remaining ships launched a coordinated assault, firing everything they had at the massive dreadnought. The Zenthar Prime's shields began to flicker, but it wasn't enough. The concentrated barrage of missiles, energy blasts, and torpedoes began to break through its defenses. The massive ship shuddered under the relentless attack, and explosions erupted across its hull. "We've got them," Ramirez exclaimed, her voice filled with a mix of disbelief and triumph. "The Zenthar Prime is going down." But just as victory seemed within reach, the Council's final counterattack came. From the depths of the enemy fleet, a swarm of battle drones emerged, each one programmed with a single mission: destroy the Silent Arm at all costs. The drones swarmed the Impetus, their weapons trained on the ship's vulnerable spots. In a split second, the Impetus rocked violently as multiple impacts sent shockwaves through the hull. "We've been hit," yelled Ramirez. "Multiple breaches in the lower decks." Cartwright's heart raced. The ship was heavily damaged, and it seemed that the final blow was about to fall. But she refused to give up. They had come this far, and they couldn't let it end here. "All hands, brace for impact," she shouted as she clutched the armrest of her chair. "We finish this fight together." With every ounce of strength, the crew of the Impetus launched one final desperate attack. They pushed every system to its limits, pouring all their remaining firepower into the heart of the Zenthar Prime. The massive warship groaned, its shields failing as humanity's weapons pierced deep into its core. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Zenthar Prime exploded in a brilliant burst of light. The shockwave rippled through the enemy fleet, scattering the remaining Council ships like leaves in the wind. "Victory!" Ramirez yelled, her voice filled with both relief and exhaustion. But there was no time to celebrate. The remaining Council forces, disoriented and leaderless, quickly began to retreat. The Silent Arm's victory was now assured, but it came at a heavy cost. Zenith Station, once a symbol of diplomacy and peace, now lay in ruins, its once grand halls shattered and silent. Commander Cartwright stood, her heart still pounding from the chaos. The battle was over. Humanity had won, but at what cost? The war had been brutal, and the scars left behind would never fully heal. As the crew of the Impetus began the long journey home, Cartwright couldn't help but wonder what the future held for humanity. They had proven their strength, their resolve, and their willingness to fight for their place in the galaxy. But they had also proven that diplomacy could only go so far. The next chapter of humanity's story was about to unfold, and Cartwright knew it would be one filled with even greater challenges and unknowns. The galaxy had learned one valuable lesson today: never underestimate humanity.